One of the things that I love about the church is how much we value marriage and family. It's a huge part of God's plan. But if you're single, that focus can sometimes make you feel like you're stuck in a waiting room while everyone else is out living their real life. Today's episode is all about pushing back on that idea. I sat down with the most amazing guest, and we had such a good conversation about what it really means to thrive in this season of singleness. We talk about finding joy while you're still single, how to stop feeling like you're just waiting for life to start, navigating all the marriage and family-heavy conversations that happen at church, and how to feel confident in your own path, even when it looks different from what you imagined. Welcome to Blonde Apologist. Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode. Happy Friday. I am so glad that you're here. I hope you're having a great day. A couple of weeks ago, I started my podcast by saying that I was thinking about doing chats at the beginning of each episode where we can talk about things that have been on my mind without going into a full episode. And I got a lot of positive responses. So I'm excited to do that here and there. And today I wanted to talk about something I've been seeing on TikTok a lot lately. And I'm not sure if it's my algorithm or if you guys see this as well. But something I've noticed is that when an LDS couple posts their wedding video or like a cute short clip of their wedding, it almost always goes viral, and not because it's like a sweet tender video, but because there's so many negative comments from people judging them for getting married so young. And I've seen it not only from members and ex-LDS members, but just from like outside people not involved with our faith at all, making videos being critical of Mormons getting married so young. And I'm just kind of annoyed by it. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about it because the fascinating thing is that we are known for having the lowest divorce rates, especially temple marriages, like have far lower divorce rates than the national average within religion or without religion. And so I'm curious if you guys are seeing that. Like the comments will be like, this won't last. I see it ending in 5 years. Give them 5 years. And then a lot of the popular comments are like, I was Mormon and I got married young and I got divorced 6 years later with 2 kids. Like, so negative. And I don't understand why anyone would feel the need to project their horrible experience and almost hope it for strangers that they don't know. And that's what these comments come across as, like, almost like, haha, I can't wait to watch them fail. And it's just disgusting and it's really sad. And I just wanted everyone to know that we're not jumping into marriages because it's expected or we're brainwashed. And this is just the culture and what we're told to do. We're taught to be intentional, to build on shared values, shared beliefs, to invite God into our relationship, and to hold value in eternal commitment. And so, in my opinion, that is why marriages have a lower divorce rate in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It really doesn't matter the age. The reality is, of course, not every young marriage works out. But let's be honest, not every late marriage works out either. And this isn't an age issue. And the same is true when people post about having children young. I see a lot of hate around that, of course, because it's so Mormon of us to have children young. And that's just as annoying, in my opinion. But the marriage thing is worse because people tend to throw their experience onto it and act as if because their experience was awful, this Mormon couple's is going to be as well. And obviously that is not the case. And so if you have received these hate comments, I love you, I'm sorry, and ignore them, screw them, and move on with your happy life and prove them wrong, as we do statistically over and over again. Okay, I'm getting a little sassy, but you guys, you're going to really love today's episode. I'm really thrilled with the guest that I had. She is incredible, and it's for all my single ladies out there. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode. Today, I am joined by Emily Snyder. So thank you for being here, Emily.
I'm so tickled to be here.
I just recently came across Emily's Instagram account, and I was immediately excited to invite her on the podcast to have a discussion on finding joy in the singleness season as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We all know that family and marriage is a huge emphasis in our church, and for a good reason, right? It's a beautiful aspect of life, but for those who are single, it can kind of feel like a pain point at times. So, we're going to talk about the beauty and finding ways to balance holding on to the doctrine and trusting God's plan. And Emily, thank you for being here. I want to start by letting you introduce yourself because, like I said, I'm kind of new to Emily as well. I came across your social media because someone recommended you. They're like, oh, you should have Emily Snyder on. And then I was like going through your account and I'm like, oh, she is just amazing. She's filled with the Spirit. I can feel it through your account.
Oh, thanks. Well, it is such, I mean, A, that somebody would suggest me, especially for this topic, and that you're doing a session about this topic is just thrilling to my soul, not just my heart, but like my soul is psyched that you're having this conversation because it is a conversation that makes me so sad that so few have found the joy in this season when it is such a glorious opportunity when we can reframe it a little differently. And it took me years to figure out how to reframe it, but I've been married 6 months and that has been one of the biggest things is I'm so thrilled and love getting to be married to this man I'm married to. And the letting go of my single life is one of the saddest things ever. And he knows that and he's so kind. But yeah, I'm excited.
No, that's amazing. And I think it's kind of a cultural issue in our church. Yeah, and that's my
Yeah.
listeners know. That's what I love discussing on my podcast is like, okay, where culturally can we make a change and maybe shift our mindset to find so much joy and thrive in this season of singleness? I think we can do that. And so you're the lady
Yes.
that's going to teach us how to do that.
Well, I'll share some hard-earned thoughts and perspectives for sure.
Okay, so briefly tell us a little bit about you.
Me, yeah. So, I'm the oldest of five. My mom was a school teacher and then a full-time mom. And we listened to songs by Janine Brady when I grew up, which many may not remember that era, but in the 80s there was a LDS woman that would write a bunch of really sweet, tender songs. One of them was When I Grew Up, I Want to Be a Mother, Have a Family. I mean, that is what I'm going to be. That is the only
Yep.
thing. My mom loves being a mom and she's so good and she's fulfilled being a full-time mom. So it was just a no-brainer. And then as the years kept going, and I was a school teacher because my mom was a school teacher, and I just followed the pattern that I'd seen, and I loved it, but dating and opportunities just weren't abundant in my life. And it kept getting older and older. And finally, I just had to own it. And I kept owning bits and pieces through the years. Um, but there was a day that I just truly was like, I'm owning this life. This is what God has given me. There's a lot of options to this, but life is happening. So if I don't choose to own this, it's going to just filter through my fingers. And what am I going to have to show for this experience? And so it was a very beautiful, conscientious, deliberate decision to own this chapter and own the season that I was in. And of course, as all the jokes play out, I mean, and I remember people would be like, as soon as you're settled, and I'm like, I'm settled. Where's the guy? Like,
Yeah.
as soon as you're settled and as soon as you're content,
As
I was
soon as you
content
stop
for
looking.
so. Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I've stopped. I'm fine. When I moved back to Salt Lake, I bought an apartment, my first piece of real estate downtown Salt Lake, renovated it. It took like a year and a half. It's a 100-year-old building.
Oh,
And
so fun.
somebody joking, not joking, was like, as soon as you get it all fixed up, you're gonna meet a guy. And I was like, shut up. Like, I'm so over those kind of comments. And then, yeah, dang it.
Oh my
It happened.
gosh.
Didn't live in my apartment even for 8 months without before I met this good man that I now get to call my husband. But
And what's his name?
Trent
Trent.
Burrup. We met. I spoke at BYU Women's Conference a year ago. Just it was just women's conference, so I spoke last year in a big opening session, and I got kind messages on Instagram. The DMs, and a gal said, "I loved your talk," and I responded back, and then she said, "Okay, now it's awkward because will you go out with my dad? My mom passed 4 years ago, and he hasn't dated anybody since." And did this like really tight bio, like in a paragraph of like all the things about her dad. And she said, "Would you go out with him?" And I was like, "Sure," because how many times
Oh
have
my
I been
gosh.
set up in my life that never pan out to even a conversation? So I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." But he did text me, and I was on a flight to Europe for 2 weeks, and so I was like, "We could text," and so we texted for those 2 weeks, and I got home, just before Memorial Day, and we started dating and didn't stop and got married in October.
Oh
So
my gosh,
I
amazing.
know. There's been lots of things this last year.
How bold of his daughter to message you that. She's the best part of that story. We need to
I
give her
know
an
she
applause.
well, and the tender part is that, I mean, that's not her typical personality, and so it was very much a I feel I feel kinda driven
Hmm.
to do this. I feel like you and my mom would have been dear, dear friends, and so it she we joke of like, "Did you ever imagine?" She's like, "Never. Never in a million years would have imagined." I'm like, "Well, that makes many of us."
No, beautiful.
So,
That's
kind of
so
fun.
great. So, do you work? What do you do?
So I'm actually adding to all the transitions of life. I've been working at the church headquarters in the priesthood and family department. Um, I was a school teacher for years. I then got my MBA at Columbia Business School. Before that, I worked at Harvard Business School for a number of years, which is why I got brave enough to get my MBA. Worked for Chip and Joanna Gaines at Magnolia out in Waco, Texas, and then have been
Wow.
here at the headquarters for like 3.5 years. But Thursday is my last day working for the church because I have a new job. I was invited to apply to be chief of staff for a company called Degreed that's looking to kind of shake up higher education as we know it. So I start that on Monday.
Wow,
So
that's exciting. New
just a
job.
couple things.
And those are all really awesome jobs and awesome, really cool
Yeah,
opportunities. So,
yeah. I've been very lucky, which is half the reason why I feel so passionate about this topic because there are opportunities to be had in all of the seasons, in ways that are so beautifully unique in being single.
okay, absolutely love that. It's if you aren't convinced, now you're convinced that she's the perfect woman for this conversation. So I can't wait. And I told Emily before we hopped on the call that I had so many listeners submitted responses of you guys who are out there and you're single and you're trying to navigate this time and trying to get over some of the pain points that our culture presents in being single, and not just our culture, but just the reality of it. And so,
Yeah, world at large. Yeah.
yes. So, this episode, we are going to read through a lot of those comments, a lot of those responses that listeners submitted, and Emily's going to share how she would respond to them because she is the woman to do so.
You're kind. You're
So,
so
you ready
kind.
to hop in?
Ready?
Okay, I'm going to start with this listener submission. She says, "It has been difficult navigating singleness when it seems that my destiny was to become a wife and mother. While this is still my dream and aspiration, it's sometimes hard to find purpose in anything else. Who am I meant to become if that is not who I am becoming?"
I love it. I love it. Um, that tension between um, this destiny and yet here we are in reality. Somebody taught me just even a couple years ago of just the gospel of Jesus Christ is full of paradoxes. It is full of it of like there's love and there is law. There is justice and mercy. There is destiny and there's reality. There's
Mm,
over and over and over the gospel of Jesus Christ is all about this paradox. And the uniqueness and the power of our individual experiences is how we navigate through those paradoxes. And that is exhausting and yet so beautiful at the same time. And in this one in particular, so pretty defining moment for me, well, oodles of them, but the killer one was I got to go to Oxford for a month when I was working for Clay Christensen. And he was there on sabbatical. And it was amazing. It was so, so amazing. The city closed up at 6 o'clock at night, and there were pubs that were open, but I wasn't at a point in my life when I felt brave enough to just go kick it at the pub with my journal or a book or whatever. And I ended up watching a lot of BBC Netflix because I was like, I don't know what else to do. And when the city's closed up and I'm by myself.
Yeah.
But I got on the airplane after that month and just was pretty devastated with myself of really, that's what you did for that this month? Like I could have been doing a specific project that was unique. Sure, I could have had the TV, or the Netflix going on the background, but I could have been doing something. I could have been writing something or creating something. And I let this entire experience kind of be a waste in that regard. And I was bound and determined never to do that again and just started really thinking of, wow, what other opportunities may come into my life where I have not I that I'm not prepared to take full advantage of it. And it just sent me on this beautiful, beautiful excursion mentally in realizing, wait, this whole singleness is actually full of countless opportunities. Had a moment when I realized if I were to die and show up to my maker and he were to say, Emily, what did you do? And at the time I was like 35, 6, 7, out of somewhere in there. What did you do with these 35 years that you only had to take care of you? I gave you a good 15 solid years by yourself. What did you do with them? And if I were to show up and say, well, I was waiting. I
Mm-hmm.
was waiting to be married and have kids to start the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I just could feel it play out and have God be like, what?
Yeah.
You missed it, honey. Like, you missed the point. Because, of course, marriage and family are an essential part of this entire experience to be God's. 100%. But I've got that taken care of. What I need you to do is show up boldly and strongly and creatively in the spaces and seasons that I'm handing you because you had no one to care for. So, what were you doing? You had no other constraints. And that just felt like the most disappointing, devastating thing that could have ever happened if I were to show up to my maker and say, well, I was waiting.
Right.
And he'd be like, I specifically crafted this experience so that you could go learn XYZ and you wasted it, sweetheart. Like I think there is something important. And I know it shows up not just in our single lives, in any of those spots where we're just like, but this is what I'm hoping for, and this is reality, and that gap. Just so many thoughts about those gaps and how powerful they are.
Well, we all experience that. Whether you're waiting right now for marriage, there's women out there who are waiting to get pregnant. We're waiting for that next step or that next stage in our life. And just hearing that story and thinking of that story of us being before heavenly parents and being like, I was just waiting for that next thing. Like it stirs something in me to want to go and make and create and make any season that you're in just holy by becoming more.
Yes. And not in such a way that it is like overwhelming or that I've got to fill every second because for
No.
sure I watch plenty of Netflix. Like I'm not that like insane, but it was such a mental switch for me of realizing, oh, these are all opportunities for me to show up and expand myself in ways that are unique to me
Yeah.
and in opportunities that the Lord has created. I think there's also, because like you said, everybody's waiting. If you're waiting for children, you're waiting for them to figure out how to be lovely children. If you've got lovely children, you're waiting for them to like be invested in church. You're waiting for them to have a career. You're waiting for them to have like always wanting. And I'm like, that's a waste of time and energy.
Mhm.
Two things that have helped so much. S. Michael Wilcox is he used to teach at University of Utah Institute and would write books and whatever. He taught an analogy and a concept of the creation and when God and Jesus Christ created the garden, brought Adam and Eve and said, "Look at this. We've created all of this for you. Just go partake. There's this one tree, but of all these things," and just keeps emphasizing, like, look, all of this garden we've created for you to partake of. There's this one. Just, just not yet. This, don't, just stay away from that one. And as soon as Satan walks in, Satan only can say, this one tree, why can't you do this one tree? And instantly takes their focus from all of the goodness and all the abundance that they have to then focus on the one
Mm,
thing in that one moment. And when I heard that from Brother Wilcox, I was like, oh my gosh. And he used it in talking about marriage because it was to a singles context and group. And he said, for sure, Satan then focuses our energy of that one thing that the Lord is like, not yet,
yeah.
not yet, and makes us forget about the billions of trees that the Lord has planted and said, I have created this just for you to go. So I love that. And then the other talk that has become my life mantra is an Elder Maxwell, content with the things allotted unto us. And he talks about this, the size of the stage that Jesus Christ used. The Sea of Galilee was so small in comparison to the stage of the universe. And yet, look at what he did with this small sphere of influence that changed the world. And I think about that so often. I feel like, what, but I don't have the things to do what I want to do, what my destiny is from that person's comment. And I think
Right.
it's just a rethinking of like, no, 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 what actually is the destiny?
Totally. Well, that's what I was thinking too, is we love to make plans for ourselves. We like to plan out our life and think of what we want to become. And if you would have asked me 2 years ago if I would have a podcast right now where I talked about pro LDS stuff, I would be like, what? Like even 2 years ago, I couldn't have planned this for myself.
Totally.
And I think that we are better off, like, yeah, if we don't want to get narrow minded and think that this one plan is the plan. Like, this is the one true show of discipleship is to get married and to have children. Because, yeah, that could be part of the plan, but we also have eternity to do that. And
Right.
right now, we have a very small amount of time on earth, and there's so many lessons that need to be learned during this testing phase. And maybe
Yeah.
marriage and family, like, it doesn't have to happen in that unit, in that life. I don't know if that
Totally.
makes sense.
No, it totally is. And the tricky part, and I will say, I loved how you said that this is about this culture that we have, this amazing, complicated, messy, not fun at times culture that we have within our faith community. The aha for me in realizing in my journey that this conversation of singleness has, yes, it's emphasized so deeply in our faith community, but it is what the whole world runs off of.
Yeah.
Every single movie has something to do with this love story. Every single song known to all mankind has something to do with wanting to find a spouse or somebody. Like, it put it into a sweeter context for me of that it wasn't just me against the church culture, but that this is how we're programmed. We are designed to be with somebody, and that is so painful to not get to have our person, especially in the context that we subscribe to as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is that we want an eternal marriage. And we want a marriage that lasts. We don't want it just for sex. We don't want it just for these, like, the quick, easy. We want the soul fulfilling experience. And so to not have that is so, so painful. And at the same time, if there's anything I have learned in these few short months of getting to be married, it was worth every second of waiting. And I would wait 10 times longer to get to be with somebody. If this is a fraction of what God has in store when He wants to pour upon His blessings, then I will do whatever it takes, because not to say it is easy because it's probably the hardest thing I've ever experienced, and I feel like I've done a pretty okay job bringing in hard things. It is so tricky. And I truly, if this is what God has in store of blessings for his children, then I have rededicated myself and recommitted to following come what may because it is worth it. And it sucks to wait. It sucks so hard. It's waiting. So, so hard to wait.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I think a lot of people could relate to it sucks to be in the waiting stage. That made me think of one of these responses that I want to go down to.
Yeah.
I found this response to be really tender and what she says, I'll just go ahead and read it. She says, during my years in the mid singles ward, there was a tendency in Relief Society for the lesson to turn into a gripe session about not being married. I often rolled my eyes because I had learned to love my single life, and I thought everyone should simply learn to appreciate the phase of life that they were in. Then one Sunday, a wave of understanding washed over me that many of my Relief Society sisters were mourning the loss of the life they had imagined and hoped for. A few years after being married, we found out that our baby would be born with Down syndrome, and it took me years to cope with the fact and to mourn the mom life I wouldn't have, and learn to see the beauty in the life I do have. I think there are many ways to mourn with those that mourn, but I think it's helpful to understand that for some single people, they will need to mourn the loss of an earthly life that they thought they would have so that they can love the life that they do have.
Oh, mic drop.
Isn't that so good?
It's so good, and it's so much of what we were talking about earlier of just like all the pieces. I remember I would go to singles wards and then I'd go to family wards. Like I was in a singles ward for a couple of years, and I'd go to family ward for a couple of years, and I'd go back and just kind of the beautiful part of being single is I had options. I could do that
Mm,
and I could shake it up a bit, but realizing I'd sometimes get in the singles ward and every hurt was about being single. And I just thought, oh, that's so, what's President Nelson's great word, myopic? Like that's so
yeah,
small-minded and thinking this is the hardest thing and not to minimize because it is so hard. Sometimes I get so frustrated when leaders who are married minimize the tenderness of being alone
yeah,
because it is you have to put a defense system up and you have to put on armor in a very different way to do things boldly alone. And there are a lot of broken expectations that everybody lives. Broken dreams, broken hopes, broken expectations. Like I was thinking about it again during the sacrament of just the power. The sacrament is broken. It is broken bread. It is not cut. It is not sliced. It is not perfectly created. It is broken with the rips and the tears and the hurts and the pains that come with brokenness. And that nobody gets to get through life without the broken dreams and the broken situations. And in the singleness broken dreams, I actually have a ton of control because I get to control my destiny as a party of one
yeah,
in a different way than if I'm in a party of two or five or whatever that familial situation looks like. As a single individual, I have so much control to figure out, which is overwhelming at times. Like I remember
yeah.
one time saying, somebody was like, I had a broken engagement, and they were like, well, now the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, shut up. I don't want anything else. I wanted this. And so when you do have all the possibilities, it's almost paralyzing to figure out, okay, which ones am I actually going to choose? When in a married context, you have limited options to choose from.
Yeah,
But what a gift. What a gift. The world is truly an oyster,
yeah,
and you're not constrained by somebody else's reality. So there's all the broken, and then in this season, there's some really sweet, sweet opportunities.
okay. I've never even taken in the aspect that the bread is broken. Why? that is gone. Like hearing that and thinking like that's gonna be, I already know that's gonna be a meaningful experience this Sunday when I just think about like we really are, we're partaking of Jesus Christ and he was broken for our sake and now we're trying to be healed through him. Like,
Yeah. And okay, good, let me just add a little bit more to that.
yeah, yeah, keep going.
Somebody mentioned the other day that a sacrament meeting is similar to a funeral in that you show up and you are there to tell about this individual that you loved so much, the memories that you had with them. That is the whole point of sacrament meeting. And yet it's also a funeral of my broken dreams. It's also a funeral of the things that I'm putting on the altar to say, I am okay for this to die. I am okay for
Mm,
these things to die because I confidently and boldly trust that they will be resurrected in a much more powerful way than I ever could have imagined. I think that is so much of the power of why we worship the way we were invited to worship.
and that is the eternal perspective. Seeing it that way rather than just being like it'll all work out in the end. Okay, that's true, but seeing it
Right,
as
not
like
wrong, but
no,
not helpful.
but like I accept the reality that I'm facing and I believe that this will all be made right and this will be resurrected and accepting God's will and timing is is what is needed. And that's yeah, that's so good.
And I don't even know, sometimes I get frustrated with accepting God's timing
Yeah,
because it feels like he's sitting up there as Zeus, just like
waiting.
waiting and like just watching me struggle and be in pain. And he's like, okay, yeah, now you can. But I think it's more so of a concept of I love I love the Hugh B. Grant. So the third talk that is my always go to is Hugh B. Grant's current bush story of being
Mm,
cut back and the master gardener. And I don't think he's just sitting up there waiting me to learn a lesson. I think he's constantly saying, I see you in your most glorious self, in your most exalted version, because God is not a respecter of times. He doesn't live in a time set. So he's not looking at the linear Emily, he's looking at the eternal Emily. And he's like,
right.
that one's not baked enough. That one hasn't grown enough. This one needs some more watering. This because you don't know how I am crafting this garden of your life. And this one needs to be pruned because you've gone off a little too much, or there's too much this one, and you're not spending. If you keep going, you're not going to have the energy to go in this spot that needs to be grown and created over here because there's a whole beautiful garden that I am growing and it is of you. So I've got all these pieces in place. It's not just you didn't pass the test. It's,
Yeah.
oh no,
No,
we're growing.
I appreciate you saying that because I do think there is I this is obviously not doctrinally sound, but there is kind of this idea that it's like if you're doing all the right things, it would happen for you. Like it would fall into place. Where does that come from?
That's total junk. That is so because I think we live in this like if you obey the commandments, you'll prosper in the land. It's like, okay, fine. But we have such his prospering, which I getting to live the life that I've lived. The person that I am today is somebody I never would have imagined I was going to be when I was 20. And love I love this version of me more than I ever could have comprehended, even fathoming that I could have been. I had no concept that this is who I am and that there's so much more. And I do a little why I stay Instagram account, inviting people to say why they choose to stay when so many of our friends and loved ones don't, which is understandable. But why I stay is because I am so selfishly curious about what else God has and sees in me. And I just want to find out. Like I am so curious to see what aspect of godhood I have in me because I had no idea. No idea that I was capable of the things that I have done. And I can't wait to see what else he knows I'm capable of. Then I'm like, wait, really? Okay, let's keep trying that.
Oh, I relate to that so much. That is so tender. Thank you for sharing that. I feel the same way in so many aspects of my life. And I do feel like that's the beauty of this gospel is giving us that perspective of these things are for like have purpose. Everything that we're going through, and when you put a gospel lens on it and you look at the gospel path, you're able to see the beauty in the brokenness, in the dreams that didn't come into fruition the way you thought they were. You're able to look back in hindsight and say, "Oh, thank you for bringing me here." You know, that current bush.
Yeah,
Thank you for cutting me down. And I
yeah.
do think that we're blessed. Like I started this episode by saying like it's kind of complicated that we focus on marriage and family, but the reality is we're all so blessed to have this gospel perspective. That's the reality. I would not trade this culture and these pain points for anything else.
Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. I agree.
Okay, so going back a little bit, you talked about how in your singleness, the world is your oyster and you only have to answer for yourself, which is a blessing. What role did personal revelation play in helping you make decisions when the world was your oyster? Because I know that that is something that stresses a lot of my single friends out is like, yes, I could move to New York, but what if my husband's not in New York? Like, I can't leave Utah. This is where all the members are. You know what I mean? Like, how did you find confidence in your revelation to make these decisions as a solo person?
So good. So hard. I think instantly when I decoupled my life from and stopped limiting God in a spousal conversation, then there was a whole different ballgame. It turned into a very, very selfish, and I think a very okay selfish, what about me? What do I want to accomplish? Because I think sometimes, in so many ways, we limit the grandeur of God and the power of God by doing those things. Because if I used to have this mantra or this little saying that, like, if God can part the Red Sea, he can find a husband for me. Like, I'm not that bad. Like, I can't be that hard to find a husband for if I'm sure I'm not that tricky. And I also, I look at friends and think, well, that's fascinating that they found each other and okay, this can't be that hard. Realizing that how dare I limit God's power and that God can actually do that. Um, somebody after I announced on Instagram that I'd met Trent and that we were getting married, um, somebody messaged me that I didn't know and said, "How am I ever going to get married? I'm never asked to. I will never be asked to speak at women's conference." And I was like, "Okay, there is no world ever in any organization known to mankind that anybody would logically think, I know if I speak at women's conference, I'll find a spouse." Like,
And you got to be the only one.
right. I'm like, this is unique. And I laughed and joked with Trent one morning when I was thinking about this and was like, "Oh, Trent, you're my Red Sea." Like, God literally parted the Red Sea for this miracle to happen. So I say all that in we're allowed in this funny paradox of this gospel where we're invited to be selfless. And being single, we are also very much, and I think I'd be as bold to say, darn well expected to be very selfish about personal progress and very selfish about what could I do? What could I be? Because I had a friend share one time that we get through life. Like, we're here on this earth life to learn certain lessons, and we're going to learn them. And whether it's by making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as a 19-year-old mother trying to juggle all the pieces and help her children through bullying and the parental controls of phones and making sure they have friends and that their clothes fit, like all those things, that is a vital way to learn life lessons. There's also a billion other ways to learn life lessons. And in the same context, I deeply believe with all of my soul that we are invited to prepare the world for the second coming of Jesus Christ. And in order to do that, with the millions and millions of people on planet Earth, there are going to need to be a lot of different ways to communicate and teach and have ideas that will resonate with the worldwide community that we will
Mm-hmm.
end up having when the second coming comes. And is a mother perspective and a young mother perspective vital? Absolutely. Like there's no question about the essentialness of that conversation. There's also a vitality of my perspective of what it means to have a mother heart in a boardroom and to have a mother heart that is anxious to create that space in places where maybe men and women didn't have great mothers and don't know what that nurturing looks like, or has a broader life experience because I've been able to be single and get to live in a lot of different ways and understand different perspectives. That is also deeply essential to prepare the world for the second coming. So, if we're in this, then we're in it. And that means my discipleship needs to be uniquely defined by me and my God, not by my friend's God and their life journey, but by me
Mm-hmm.
and my God and what is required of me. There's verses in the Book of Mormon that says the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And I used to think, okay, got it. I mean,
You're the same
there's
person.
an academic reason, right, of like, okay, this God is a separated God because they don't worship idols, like in the ancient days of Egypt. And so that was a distinction of like this was a different God. But then I was like, but it was the same God that Abraham worshiped, that Isaac did, that Jacob did. But then my personal insight was, but he had a very different relationship and a very different ask for each one of those men.
Mm-hmm.
And the sacrifices and the journeys that they each took looked so different that I was like, oh, I worship that God, the God that has a different path of discipleship for Emily Snyder than he did for Isaac and Jacob.
Yeah, that's so good. I also believe that God cheers us on with our dreams and our ambitions. And so if you want to go get the job in New York, but you're worried about like not finding someone, as long as you're including him in your plans and asking him how he feels about it, like he's cheering you on and it's gonna work out for your benefit. Like I remember when I had my son, my first child, I wanted to go back to work and I thought, uh-oh, maybe I'm not supposed to go back to work. Maybe God doesn't want me to go back to work. And so I took it to him and I'm like, I'm feeling this desire to go work again. And I felt immediately like this support, this encouragement, this I am cheering you on if that's what you're going to go want to go do. And so I love what you were saying in the beginning is like, let's not like think narrow mindedly. Let's not try to like put God into this box when like he is so much bigger and he can make great things happen as we pursue what we want to. So anyone listening, I don't want them to put so much stress on like I have to stay in Utah or like I have to do this thing. If I make this one move, I might not find my husband. It's like no, think about yourself. What are you wanting? What are you going for? And then just involve God in your plans and it works itself out.
It does. Well, and I think so often, again, a paradox, we tend to think God's our puppeteer and like,
Right.
well, God, what do you want of me? And I just think how nauseating. Like, that's so disgusting at times to be like, well, I don't know how to move without you telling me where to go, God.
Yes.
I believe in a God that's like, what do you want? And let me give my stamp of approval and let me see how we can make that happen. Because I think that's what parents do. Like I think as we're growing and being adults, if we were to go to mom and dad and be like, well, I don't know. What do you guys think I should do? What do you I'm like, no, that's not fulfilling. But for us to offer up, like, these are my best laid plans, Lord. Like, this is how I've sought this out and I've studied this out in my mind. And I think I want this. I think I would feel excited about this
Mm-hmm.
and have him give the stamp of approval and help clear the pathway. Totally different prayer, totally different ask of God that I think he's quick to answer to be like, okay, you are a profitable servant. You are making things happen and not waiting to be acted upon.
Yes, you're not compelled in all things. I love that. You said it better than I was. That's so
No,
good. Yes.
no.
Um, all right. I saw there was another response that I saw you had a comment for, and I wanted to get to. Okay.
Okay.
This person says, my patriarchal blessing is super specific on who I'm going to marry, which is like so helpful because I'm an overthinker, but also makes me nervous when dating because again, I'm an overthinker. Curious if anyone else has a specific line about their spouse and how to go about it in dating.
Mm. I love it. I love that you brought this up at this time because my thought is so similar too in this context of
Yes.
like, do we trust God or do we not trust God? Do we trust that He wants what I want more than I want it for myself, or do we not? And do we trust that it may look different than I anticipated, but it is going to be better than I anticipated? So, there are some things in my blessing that I studied a great deal. One of them that said, Emily, do not be impatient. And it took me a number of years to realize that doesn't even just say be patient. It says do not be impatient. And I was like, okay, well somebody that's a good smack upside the head about
I
my
know, like, I think he has a
personality.
sense of humor for that one.
Yeah, and I was like, oh gosh. There were some other lines that I studied, and I kept trying to make work with different men that I had dated. I was like, well, that would work. I mean, if we took this out and this out, like that would fit into that box, that phrase. And it is mind blowing to me how, and I say this with great caution, I don't believe in soulmates in any stretch of the imagination.
Yes.
And I think the lessons that the Lord has invited me to learn through marriage to anybody would have fit the person that I would have been attracted to would have fit this line in particular because those are the lessons that are next up on my trajectory of my growing my garden of like this I would not pull in of my own accord. I would not learn these lessons by myself. I would have to have a spouse for Emily Snyder to learn these lessons. And I just was stunned at how clear looking at it of being like, oh gosh, I wish I would have. I'm stunned at how I get to trust God because He fulfilled it so explicitly that I get to just shut up in life a lot now to just be like, okay, I I recognize this so beautifully, and the Lord truly did have something planned. Whether it's for my career, whether it's for family situations, and whether it's for marriage, it is mind blowing to me as I look back in a lot of different pieces of my patriarchal blessing. He fulfills it, hands down, hands down.
Yeah, trust in him. If it's in there for a reason.
Yeah.
I you said, and I agree, I don't believe in soulmates. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Because I think that might be another part of the pressure. These are like high
Mm,
stakes when you think that there's one person that you pre-mortally made plans with. That makes it seem very
so
daunting
true.
to find them.
So
So let's kind of break that idea for a
yeah,
second.
yeah. So on my mission, I remember walking, I served in Russia, and I remember walking in this spot with a companion and realizing I was showing up with that companion differently than I did with a previous companion. Like a different part of my personality was coming out. I was maybe more rigid about something or I was looser. Like there was just so many different parts of me I was discovering with different companions and I was like, "Oh, this is one of them. I can't remember what was going on, but I was so stressed because I felt like we weren't very obedient. I don't even know what we weren't doing. Like we can't cross the street unless it is actually telling us to cross the street. Like I was just needing something to control. My gosh. So there's just so many aspects. And I remember thinking, oh, that's what dating is. Dating is providing opportunities for me to find out who my most favorite version of myself is
Mm,
and who do I want to spend my life showing up as more like and I think we all feel that with different friends of any gender or any age, like we show up differently with different friends because different parts of our personalities are needed or not needed in different scenarios. And I think that for me is so much of the soulmate conversation of like, I remember thinking marriage is not the hard thing. Like the wedding, getting married is not a tricky thing because if I wanted to, I could get married and find somebody on Mutual and good night. There's some fascinating people on all the days. I can get married. That's not what I'm looking for. But I am looking for somebody that's going to help bring out my favorite version of myself. And that's worth the wait. And I believe there's a lot of people that could be that. There's a lot of people that could fulfill that or help me learn certain lessons. It just is a matter of choosing. In fact, um, when I years and years and years ago, I had the prayer of like, I'm so sick of praying about being married, Lord. I am so sick of trying to pray for this. And if I'm sick of it, I can imagine you're also sick of hearing it. So like, how about we change this game and you teach me what I can pray for because I'm
Mm.
tired of this. And for the only time of my life, very clear words came of that these would be the words that I could pray of I signed up to build the kingdom, period. If it is most effective and efficient for me to do that single, I will happily be single because my first priority is building the kingdom. The
Mm.
minute, the second that I'm more effective building the kingdom married, we're just going to commit. God, you're just going to drop him in my lap. It's not going to be a lot of work. It's not going to be a lot of the dating games. It's just going to be very easy. And I prayed that um, probably early 2000s. So like 2004-ish, 5-ish. And that has just been my prayer. Like I've stopped praying about marriage because I've just trusted, okay, I will go about being content because I trust that you have this. Doesn't mean I didn't cry lots of times, but still, that is the undercurrent. When Trent and I were texting over those 2 weeks, randomly had the thought, not in the middle of us texting at a totally different moment, he could be he could be that guy if you choose.
Mm.
Which was so tender to feel like he could be. He fits that. He could be the person that answers that for you, but he doesn't have to be. If you don't want to do this version, that's totally fine. I have another one that we can make happen. So I can't believe in soulmates because I don't believe that is how God functions, that a God of agency and a God who is a master at taking whatever comes his way and making it the most beautiful thing ever is not a God about soulmates.
Oh, I love that. I love that experience of having that simple whisper of he could be the one if you choose. And it reminds me of my experience trying to decide if I should marry my husband. I put such an emphasis on God telling me to marry him. I was waiting for that lightning bolt out of the sky sign that he was the one. And finally, I was so discouraged that it wasn't coming. And I was so overwhelmed.
Wow.
And I went and I prayed. I had gone to the temple. I'd fasted. I was trying to do all the things to get the answer. And then finally I prayed and I said, I am choosing to marry Tanner. I'm choosing him. Please let me know how you feel about that. And immediately just overwhelmed with this is good. And you guys will do great things together. And I have that same thought. Like, he could be, I was choosing him. It was my choice. This is my
Yes,
agency.
yes,
And
yes.
so,
Which goes back to, I mean, the conversation earlier of being scared to leave Utah and scared, like, what if my husband isn't there? Of like, make a choice,
yeah,
make a plan, make your favorite decisions, and then I mean, God shows up for those conversations in a heartbeat of like,
yeah.
you're going to go be proactive, you're going to lead out in your life. Yes, I will confirm for you yes or no on those things, but don't sit and wait for me to give you the answer to your life. You need to own your life, Jenny.
I love that. lead out in your life. We all need to do that. That's just good for all of us.
I dream of writing a book called Own Your Damn Life. Own your damn life, sweetheart. Like, just own it.
Okay. You mentioned in your singleness you bounced between YSA and family wards. Was it hard to find belonging? Did you struggle finding a place for yourself in this
Mm.
mid-single adult stage of your life?
Oh, I love that question. Because the word belonging, I feel like, is one of my trigger words that I wrote an article a couple months ago for that Public Square online magazine. I don't know if you see that,
Yeah.
about belonging, because I think belonging, I hate that word because it gives my power away. And it means I'm subject to somebody else. And I think that is the no, I'm not. I'm not subject to anybody.
Mm,
So I belong because I've decided I belong and because I choose to belong. And then the conversation is, how do I make a space for myself in a spot that I've decided to belong? That principle applies not just in a church religious
yeah.
construct. I think it applies in a high fitness class at 5:15 when I'm the most out of shape person and I've decided, like, do I belong here? I choose. They don't choose. I choose if I belong there and if I fit in. Whether it's a Harley Davidson class, like, that may not be somebody that somewhere that people would instantly be like, I belong there. Well, I decide if I'm a Harley
Yeah.
Davidson person. Nobody else gets to decide that. So the same applies to our religious communities. I think, especially as singles, in saying, okay, well, sure, I'm single, and I think singles congregations are lovely to find friendships. Friendships that I can call on a Friday night in a different way than I can my married friends, because there's just a different flexibility with singles. There's just a different type of community socializing that happens with singles. So of course we need friends. Of
Mm-hmm.
course we do. So I would hire a singles ward to find some friends. But I also felt like sometimes it was really empty. And so then I would go hire a family ward to create a different depth of community and a different depth of my ability to serve. I got to be the primary chorister in one family ward. I got to be a primary teacher. And initially I was like, I thought, what is the quickest way for me to find friends in a family ward and find relationships that are meaningful? And I thought, through the kids. If I can fall in love with the kids, then their parents can't not love me. They will adore me if I love and invest in their kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
And hands down, like, absolutely, it is such an instant win to success. So, me falling in love with their kiddos and investing and loving on them instantly made instant friends for me in the family ward because I chose to belong. I wasn't waiting for somebody to pull me in because, of course, they don't need me. They've never seen me before. Nobody's sitting around waiting and praying, like, God, I wish Emily Snyder would show up in my life. Nobody gives a rip about Emily Snyder. So if I'm new in a situation, it's my job. It's nobody else's job to make space for me. And so I've learned how to just kind of do a shimmy. In fact, very tangibly, one of my first Sundays in the family ward in Boston, I got there early. I moved to the middle of the pew, so I wasn't taking a ton of space, but I wanted to be in the middle to, like, be a part of things. And it took me 2 Sundays to realize that's not so smart because people not knowing me didn't know if I had family coming and didn't know me enough to ask me, so
Mm-hmm.
people didn't sit by me. So then I was like, "Okay, change my tactic. I'm gonna go 1 minute late because everybody's seated and all their families are there and everybody can scooch over for one." And so I could find the rows that had just enough room and be like, "Oh, can I sit right there?" And sure enough, people would wiggle, and I could just wiggle right into that little spot on the table and not feel like I was out of place. Of course, they wanted me to belong, but they didn't know how to. I have to host. I have to
Yeah.
be the one to invite people to make space for me.
I feel like that's just the theme of this whole conversation is like just take control of your life. Like you are in control. We're not waiting
Mhm.
around. God's not puppeteering like when we're going to meet our spouse and when that is going to
Nope.
happen. Like, we just need to move forward and be anxiously
Yeah.
engaged and doing a
Yeah.
good work and just trust.
Yeah. Well, and I think with that, when I moved back from Waco, Texas, back to Utah. So how old was I? 45-ish, 43, 44, something like that. So I've done this. I'm pretty, I figured out a lot of things by that point. Moving back to Utah was really tricky. And I moved back, and friends that I did EFY with years ago were having a Christmas party. And so I knew some of them, I didn't know a lot of them. And I went as a party of one because I was single and had I wasn't dating anybody and just went because I don't limit my life because I don't have somebody to go with me. Went to the party, and a number of people would come up and say, "Oh, where's your husband? Oh, how many kids do you have?" It's just a natural assumption of
Hmm.
my life looking like the stereotypical of what our culture thinks life is going to look like. And usually there's a lot of ways that could go is I could be like, "Oh, well, I'm not married," and make it really insecure and feel insecure about it. And then they feel like idiots and totally stupid. And then it's awkward to get the conversation back going.
Yeah.
But if I realize that I'm fine being single and I'm confident in who I am and that God does have a plan for me and that I am building my plan with Him, I'm not insecure about it. I know they were intending, it's exhausting, but they were intending kindness. And so I can host them through that and saying, "Oh, single, always single, family of one," and then keep the conversation going and go back to the conversation, like ask about them.
Yeah.
Then I'm in charge of the conversation and I'm not feeling like a victim to my circumstance that isn't matching their but that fits in any situation. Sure, it's single, it's widowed, it's divorced, it's not having kids, it's not having kids in the church, it's not having a job. I mean,
Yes.
you
There's
name
so many.
it. It's
Hmm.
all of those moments to then host and help people say, "No, I'm okay. I'm okay with where I'm at."
Yeah. And that's mature. Like you said, it happens for any number of reasons. Like, you don't, whatever reason, you don't fit the stereotypical ideal, but giving people the benefit of the doubt that like they're well meaning,
Mhm.
we just have to do that, unfortunately. Because I got a lot of people who ask that. It's like, I get asked every family outing, who are you dating? How's dating going? And
And I think it's okay to say in our minds, like, well, they're stupid to be asking that. But, like
like, let's
sometimes it's
acknowledge
like, well,
it.
you're the idiot. Yeah,
Yeah.
like they're not very creative in asking great questions. In fact, a good friend of mine, Trent, has an 18-year-old son, and my friend said, "What is Tyler excited about doing after he graduates?" So there was no expectation of what that answer was going
Mm,
to be versus a very stereotypical in our faith community of like, "Oh, is Tyler going on a mission?"
yes.
Which instantly puts somebody at it. So I think it's the invitation or the acknowledgement of like, "Well, you're not very creative and you're trying to get to know me. You're only going to ask me about this very easy question.
Yeah.
Sad for you. I'll take control of this conversation and I'm going to actually turn it back on you and I'm going to get curious about you and show you how to be creatively curious."
Yeah. I would love to know, how did you like, with feelings, with seeing like your peers get married and people move
Mhm.
on and have families, how did you overcome feelings of disappointment in your life
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
you felt like you were maybe being left behind? Because I know that's a common
Mhm.
feeling that people
Conversation.
experience.
Yeah. Um, two things instantly come to mind. First, they're not my husband. Like whoever they marry, that's not the person I wanted to marry. So it was
True.
like, well, okay, that's great that you found your person, but that's not my person. Um, so enjoy. But then second, going back to so much of what we talked about of, do I truly believe that God wants what's best for me and wants what I want more than anything? And it then began to be I think it's a very rare reality to be proud of an unknown path and to be confident in walking an unknown path. I think that takes so much courage and strength. And when I realized that that's what I was embarking on, is was an invitation to be bold in walking an unknown path.
Mm.
There's great there's great power. I um in different scripture studies realizing the Lord asks for very illogical things of those that follow him. Nothing makes sense by most everybody in the scriptures. It
Yeah.
makes no sense for Nephi to build a boat that he had never seen before. None of the scripture stories make logical sense. And at the same time, realizing the scriptures do not talk about families. There is a Nephi family, a Lehi and Sariah family. There's Abraham and Sarah. But those are pretty much the only families that we hear about in scriptures for the most part. Every other person in scriptures are individuals. We do not hear about Peter's wife or Peter's family. We hear that John has a brother James that we have no idea what his mom is like or what their sisters are like. We do not know about marriage and family in the scriptures. We know about individuals walking new pathways that are abnormal for their time and for their sphere with God. That is what the scriptures are full of.
Yeah, it's
That
so
gives me
true.
courage and confidence to say, okay, this is not my journey, and I'm not alone because every other person that walks with God walks a very uncommon pathway in some spot along their in their journey.
Well, this has been so good. I feel so uplifted. I feel I've learned so much, Emily.
Oh, you're so nice.
Seriously. No, I've loved it. And I know that it's going to be
Oh,
so beneficial for anyone that listens. And to close out, I'm just going to let you just take the mic. Is there any closing remarks that you want to share? Anything that you want to make sure my listeners hear, especially maybe those who are single?
mm. Um, I think the only other thought, because these have been such fun questions, and I think I've been able to, like, being able to think through some thoughts, kind of put out my offering of so much of my heart that I've gathered over the years of this. The only other thing that I would encourage, singles wards tend to have a psychology of we're put together to get married. No matter how anybody wants to shake it up or think that that's not what's being communicated, that is the culture of when you're in a singles gathering. The concept is find a spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I despise that because I think, again, there's so much more to dating. But I understand why those that are married that might be leading some of those congregations want that because it is a wonderful thing. And we all want that. But that is not the only point of dating.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we could live in a world and have bold individuals shake up that experience and flip dating on its head to just celebrate and get curious about each other, that in the long run is going to give us better dating experiences. We're going to have better understanding of who we actually want to spend time with and just creates a richer community at large. I did a I went to Boston for an education conference years ago, and it had nothing to do with getting people married. It had everything to do with these singles are professionals in their own right. They are leading and creating incredible things in organizations. How can we rein in that power and expertise to do something that we can't do with any other group of people? There's no other group of individuals in the church that can gather and have such the professional quality and insight than singles. And if we could change the paradigm in saying, what are we building together that nobody else can build? Because back to another conversation, we don't have the same constraints.
Yeah.
We have a lot of constraints that we have to do it by ourselves. We have to make sure the trash is out by ourselves. We have to do the grocery shopping ourselves. We have to do like all the life things we do ourselves. But we have a very different flexible time frame in which we do things. How can we lean into the fact that we are all powerful creators and that as singles, we are in a spot where we can get curious about each other, discover the best things of each other and help each other grow, and then dating can happen when it happens.
Yeah.
My bishop in a singles ward gave a talk about the power to create. And he said, too often in this context, in a singles word, we think that creation is only about making children. And how wrong is that thinking? Because the power to create is to bring into existence something that has never been in existence before. That means a conversation. That means a new relationship of any accord. That means new art, whatever it is. But he was like, you are creators, and shame on you if you are waiting to create. And I
Mm.
think look at in singles words, and it not be about dating and not be or dating to find a spouse. Dating for fun, dating for discovery, dating to practice some skills for sure, and getting to invest in each other, but not dating simply to marry and not just to have makeout sessions and not just to have like,
Yeah.
let's look at those as well, guys.
No, that's such good advice. It takes the pressure off too. I think there's so much
It does.
pressure and high stakes in those singles words, and it's so hard for people. Like I had
Totally.
girls messaging me like, I don't even want to go to my singles ward because of this
Yeah,
environment, because of this pressure.
totally.
And so, man, Emily, we need to make sure everyone in the church hears that. Like my podcast
Okay.
listeners, only so many. We need to get you up at general conference saying this is why
Okay,
we have
no,
singles
no.
wards.
But I think the ultimate thing of all the thoughts is God did not make us to be victims. We are not, we can be victimized by certain scenarios, but we are never victims. I'm not a victim to dating. I'm not a victim to not getting married. I'm not a victim to not getting the date. I am somebody. I'm a daughter of God who has power to create whatever it is that I want to create.
Hmm.
And when I propose that plan to him, he shows up and he partners with me to make it better than I can imagine.
Amen. I have felt that and seen that in my own life. Create with God.
Mm.
It's so
Mhm.
beautiful. And it's what we were created to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Emily, you're beautiful inside and out. And I seriously have loved this conversation. So thanks for joining me
Thanks,
today.
me too. You're so good at this.
Oh, whatever. I'll go ahead and sign out. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. If you have a moment, please leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast. And I'm so grateful for you. I hope you have a great weekend. Bye, guys.